So we're halfway through 2021 and there's still no update to the Mavic Pro 2. The question is it still worth buying one? Let's find out. Hello, my name is Jonathan Palfrey and welcome back to my YouTube channel. So today I wanted to look at one of my favourite bits of kit of all time really, and actually probably one of the most sort of staple parts of our entire kit that we use on resort shoots. You know, we've been changing cameras over the years, we've been using different lenses and all this kind of thing, but one thing that has really stayed pretty consistent is our drone choice. And ever since it came out, the Mavic 2 Pro has been that drone of choice for all of our shoots. Now, this isn't our first drone that we actually picked up. We had an Inspire 2 initially, and that was a great drone, but it was so big and it was such a pain to travel with. It required a really large case, which had to be then checked in. It causes all sorts of headaches when you're trying to travel with something that large. It's also a very slow setup time. It takes about 15 minutes to really set it up. And I think unless you're really doing shoots that need that kind of longer lens stuff and that extra speed that the Inspire can offer, it's just something that's not worth going for. We did also have a Phantom 4 Pro, which was also a good reduced sized version of the Inspire. It had pretty much everything we wanted and it shot some great video, but there were still limitations. It was still relatively large. It was still a backpack to carry around for that drone, and things like, you know, not having 10-bit color really let it down. So then they released the Mavic 2 Pro, and it really was the perfect drone. A 1-inch sensor, 10-bit color, and just having everything in such a compact setup that basically fits in the same slot that the 7200 fits in the bag. That solves, especially for what we do with traveling around the world, getting on planes everywhere, something that small that you can quickly take off is perfect. The other thing as well to consider when you're thinking like using these drones is the amount of noise and disruption they cause. You know, people don't like, especially if they're on holiday in a resort, hearing a drone buzzing around all day while we're getting shots of one of the villas, for example. So having something that's smaller that can go up quickly and get the shot and come down quickly is another massive advantage for having a smaller drone like this one. So as I mentioned, this is one of my favorite bits of kit that we own, and it's just because it's just been so reliable at doing exactly what we need it to do over all these years. Like, there hasn't really been anything else that's come out in the meantime where you kind of feel like, I really need that feature or I really need that upgrade. It just does the job, and it's quite nice actually for once not to be kind of wanting another feature or wanting to add something else to your setup. Now, so often we feel frustrated by our cameras where they're almost perfect, they're almost exactly what we want, but they may be missing features like autofocus or stabilization. But with this, it just feels like they've ticked pretty much every box that you could ever wish for, minus a few things which we'll hopefully see in a future update. So what is it that I love about this drone? Well, first off, that 4K image is really still quite impressive. Even though it's now a few years old, it's nice and sharp, and actually not overly sharp, which a lot of the other DJI drones suffer from, where they kind of add too much sharpness and you can't get rid of it. With this, I think it's just about the right amount. Speaking of the image, the 10-bit color was also a massive upgrade over the previous drones and really made it a worthwhile upgrade. It's not just about how much you can adjust the image with the 10-bit color, you know, being able to adjust the colors without worrying about banding as much and things like that. It's also the color accuracy, and I've got to say, actually, you know, they use the Hasselblad branding on the front, which you could argue is a bit of a gimmick thing. But actually, when it comes to the colors, I really do think it does actually add something, and it definitely gives you a nice neutral image to work from. Very much so. The images you get out of this drone are exactly what you expect it should be. And yes, there are maybe small improvements that could be done over time, but overall, I think it's done a really good job. In terms of flying the drone, I mean, there's really nothing much to complain about when it comes to this one. It has all the sensors you need to make sure you don't really crash it anywhere, and it has quite decent battery life really. You know, it's quite safely getting 20 minutes of flight time before you need to come down and land. And I think honestly that's probably enough for most drone flights. It's also more than fast enough for most people. And actually it was probably one thing that I was concerned about when I moved away from using the Inspire. I was thinking, will other drones be able to be fast enough for certain shots? You know, if you're chasing, say, a car or a jet ski, for example, is something I often do, would a smaller drone be able to keep up as well as the Inspire did, which was a beast when it comes to speed? And to be honest, 99% of the time, this thing is more than fast enough. Now, this drone isn't all perfect, and with maybe a Mavic 3 Pro on the horizon, what could be improved? What could be changed in this drone to really make it absolutely perfect? Well, let's start off with that 4K image and the cropping of the sensor. Now, it's great that you can have the option to do the crop to get the 4K or go wider if you need the wider view. But with that wide view, it doesn't actually process the image, meaning it results in barrel distortion. And this is a thing I see everywhere. So often do you see curved horizons with this drone. You see footage out there and the horizon just looks like a bendy thing with like the sea doesn't look correct. And it's so frustrating because it's a big giveaway that it's been shot on this drone. And it's just one of those things that I wish that they just fixed either with software inside the drone so it processed it and you never saw the distortion, or hopefully in the future drone, it will be an issue that doesn't even need to exist at all. Now, one thing I like to see in the next drone is 50p. Now, this can do 4K 25, and actually, you know what? 90% of the time, that is absolutely fine. It's just that sometimes slowing things down can be quite useful. Not necessarily for a slow-mo shot, because actually most drone shots you kind of want in normal speed, or you don't want it going too slow. But it's actually to help calm the images down when, say, it's a really windy day on a resort. Sometimes when we're shooting on resorts, it does get really quite windy, and on camera, it can look really quite rough. The drone handles it fine, it doesn't have a problem with the wind, but things like the leaves on trees and the branches swinging everywhere, along with the water looking rough, having the ability to slow things down in half would just make things look a lot calmer and a lot nicer for those kind of shots. In the next drone, it would be nice to see interchangeable lenses. Whether it'll actually happen, I'm not so sure. I mean, I think there's probably a lot of complicated balancing that would have to go on with the gimbal and the drone itself to keep it this compact and as well as have interchangeable lenses. One thing I'd love to see on the next Mavic is USB-C charging. Now, don't get me wrong, the charging setup is pretty good with this drone, but I think nowadays with power delivery out of USB, it would just make things so much easier if everything could be charged off USB-C. Not just the controller, but actually the drone batteries as well. It just means you don't have to then carry around specialist chargers for different devices. It would be nice to see some extra flight time if that was an extra feature, and I'm sure it will be in the next drone. I'm sure flight times will get longer. But to be honest, I don't think it's really that big of a deal. As I mentioned earlier, most times 20 minutes is more than enough time in the air before coming back down in either swapping battery or moving on to another location. I don't really think that suddenly having an extra 10 minutes of flight time is going to make the world of difference to most people's flights. To be honest, I'm not that bothered about seeing any more new flying features in the drone. The ones they have are great and they are very useful when you need to use them. But to be honest, I think it's just about keeping it simple, really. Like, if it's an easy to fly, as it already is, you don't really need all these extra functions in the app. In fact, I'd rather see more cinema controls and overlays in the app, such as like false color. That would actually be a more useful addition than adding more intelligent flight controls for the drone. So after all of that, the one big question remains: should you be buying a Mavic 2 Pro in 2021? Is it still the best drone out there for the price? And that is a very difficult question, especially if you're looking at getting one right now. Now, there are other options. There's drones like the DJI Air 2S, and I've got to say that looks very, very impressive. It's smaller than this drone, it has a higher resolution, still has that 10-bit color, and in many ways it pretty much is, I would say, the replacement for this one. However, the Air 2S doesn't have a built-in aperture, which is a real problem when it comes to, I think, adjusting exposure mid-flight. Yes, you've got your ND filters, and that's fine. You can sort of set it to how you want roughly, which is what I do with this one. Usually have it like on an ND8, for example, and that in sunny conditions is pretty good. And yes, you can tweak the shutter speed if you need, but it's not really as good as being able to just fine-tune it down, moving the f-stop up or down slightly to get the exact exposure you want, especially when it's changing conditions and maybe clouds might suddenly come in or then they go back out again, and you really want to be landing every few minutes to have to change your ND filters, especially when you've got maybe a longer battery life, which kind of defeats the point of having that additional battery. That said, if you really need a drone right now, I probably would go for the Air 2S over the Mavic 2 Pro. If you already own a Mavic 2 Pro though, I would say just wait. Wait for the Mavic Pro 3. I think it'll be a much bigger upgrade and I think it'll be a worthwhile wait. And if you're not in a rush, then once again, I would say wait for the Mavic Pro 3. The Air 2S is an excellent price and a worthwhile drone to go for if you are needing a drone right now. I think you could buy it, use it, and you get good value out of it, and even probably sell it and purchase the Mavic 3 Pro without much loss or feeling like you've wasted your money. I really do think you'll be quite satisfied with that purchase. That said, if you can wait, or if you've already got a Mavic 2, then I'd say maybe it's just worth waiting. I think you're not going to probably see enough of an upgrade. I think the colours are probably still a bit better on the Mavic 2. And personally, I think waiting for bigger and better features and the full package just for that little bit more money is going to be absolutely worth it. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. As always, please like and subscribe because it massively helps out the channel. This is actually going to be one of the first of many videos where I'll be talking about specific kit that I use on resort shoots. So please make sure you subscribe and be ready to watch that. Thank you again for watching. My name has been Jonathan Palfrey and I'll see you next time. Goodbye.